After going over the CSS, it's time to go into the code changes we made for this design. First, we need some common business logic to represent a dish. I used the Properties API to represent the dish object. A dish contains a unique ID, price, name, description, an image in two sizes, thumbnail and full size. The About form is pretty trivial. We store the full HTML hierarchy under the HTML directory, which acts as a special case and allows us to view HTML with all the bells and whistles on the device. We use enclosed layout to position the cart icon on the top right. This encloses the button in a flow layout to position it in the right place. The top area is big enough to contain the image we see here, and its size is determined by the size of the top bar, which is the top of the main form. However, because we use enclosed right, the cart button is positioned correctly. The pickup component is just a hard-coded set of values from 1 to 100 with a special case for 0. We use a picker class to represent that, but the layout of the main widget is interesting here. We have a box layout X for the elements which arrange them in a row. It's important not to use flow layout for the entire row, as it might break a line, which isn't something we want at this point. However, if we use flow layout for a single element, breaking a line isn't an option, so this won't be a problem. We wrap the quantity button in a flow layout, so it will be in the middle. We do the same for the two labels, since both comprise of one item. The flakiness that is sometimes associated with flow layout isn't applicable, and we can just use it as a trick to center align elements. We don't need to center align the image because it is physically larger than the other elements. The labels are arranged as a box layout Y. Notice they are in the middle because of the flow layout surrounding the box Y. The quantity button allows us to edit the number of elements and also remove an element from the list. If you look at the removal effect looping to the right here, you will notice that this animation has several stages. First, we set the dish to an X position outside of the form and call animate unlayout to show the floating out. Animate unlayout moves a layout from a valid laid out state to an invalid state and is designed exactly for this use case. Next, we physically remove the element, which is now outside of the form, and we animate the UI layout. This creates this cool layout effect. The Contact Us form is relatively simple. It has a lot of data in it, but all of that is pretty standard. First, we have the Map Container class, which is a part of the Codename1 Google Maps CN1 lib that we installed into the application. This can be installed via the extensions menu and allows us to place a native map on the form. The coordinates of the map are all hard-coded at this point. The address is just a text area that isn't editable, styled to appear in this specific way. The phone and navigate buttons are just standard Codename1 buttons with the shopping cart style. They map to the appropriate native functionality in the display class. we overlay the text and buttons container on top of the map using the layered layout. Since the map is a native component, there are implications to placing an overlay on top, but there are a bit too much for this discussion. If you are interested in learning more about that, check out the developer guide section on peer component. The dish view is very similar to the map view in regard to the bottom description and the overlay. Notice that I went with image viewer instead of using an image. This allows pinch to zoom that will even work with the overlay on top and will allow us to look more closely at the dishes. The price label is essentially the same your order component that appears in the top of the standard forms. However, if we tried to draw it cut off, the round border wouldn't let us. The layout manager prevents us from placing a component off screen as well. There are other hacks we could do, but I chose to just paint the component onto an image that is too small to hold the full size of the component. Then place that image on the screen using a glass pane. A glass pane is drawn as an overlay on top of the entire screen, and as you can draw anything there. There are surprising parallels between best practices in almost every discipline I ever learned. Design is no different. You can take a lot of the core tenets of programming and apply them to design once you understand the basic philosophy. If you look at the previous UI elements, it's pretty obvious which ones were designed by a designer and which ones weren't. But if we showed them to someone who isn't sensitive to design nuance, it might take some guesses. So we can get by, but not much more than that. When in doubt, I take the lazy approach. I just use images or other elements to cover up the lack of design skills. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this educational. Please join the discussion in the comments section and let me know what you think.